If you've been scrolling through endless digital piano options and still feel stuck, you're not alone. I get it, spending money on an instrument that doesn't feel right can set you back both financially and creatively. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started comparing models, the biggest question in my mind was how much of an acoustic piano experience I could actually get without the maintenance and space demands of a real upright. The Kawai CX202 sits in that sweet spot where you want genuine feel for everyday practice, but you also need something that won't dominate a small apartment or a teaching studio. The first thing I noticed after a quick unboxing was the weight of the keys. Kawai's responsive hammer compact II action isn't just a marketing phrase. The graded hammer mechanism actually makes the lower keys feel heavier and the higher ones lighter, just like a concert piano. That grading matters the most when you're running scales or working on dynamics, because it forces you to think about finger pressure the way an acoustic would. One of the practical strengths that shows up in real use is the 192-note polyphony. In a typical practice session, you might be layering sustain, using the built-in metronome, and perhaps looping a short passage to play over it. With 192 notes, the piano never cuts off the sound prematurely, even when you hold chords and sustain while playing a melodic line. I tested this by playing a Bach convention in the left hand, holding a full-voiced chord, and then improvising a right-hand line. The sound stayed intact, which is something many entry-level keyboards stumble over. The CX202 also gives you 17 built-in sounds. That might sound modest compared to higher-end workstations, but in day-to-day life, it's actually enough to keep things fresh. I use the bright grand piano for classical pieces, switch to the electric piano for a jazzy cover, and occasionally dip into the strings patch for a simple pad behind a vocal rehearsal. The limited palette means you won't waste time scrolling through hundreds of options you'll never use, and each sound is sampled from a Kawai acoustic source, so the tone feels authentic enough for small performances or a home recording session. Built-in speakers in a satin black cabinet give the CX202 a clean, unobtrusive look that blends into a living room or a music room without screaming instrument. The speakers are modest, about the size of a small bookshelf, but they project clearly enough for solo practice and casual duet playing. I set the piano next to my couch and could hear every nuance of a Chopin nocturne without turning the volume up to an uncomfortable level. However, if you plan to use the piano in a larger space, the speakers start to feel thin, and you'll likely need an external amp or headphones. That's a trade-off to keep in mind if you're thinking about a family gathering or a small venue gig. Dual split modes are another practical feature that often gets overlooked. The piano can divide the keyboard into two independent zones, each with its own voice and volume. I've used this when teaching beginner students. One side stays on a soft piano tone for the child, while the other side can be set to a bright organ or a percussion sound for a rhythm exercise. It also works well for composers who want a quick way to layer textures. Set the lower half to a string pad and the upper half to a piano, then record a simple arrangement without any external gear. Now, let's talk about who really benefits from this instrument. If you're a beginner who wants a realistic feel without breaking the bank, the CX202 hits the mark. Its graded hammer action gives you the muscle memory you need, and the manageable sound list keeps you focused on playing rather than endless tweaking. It's also a solid choice for a piano teacher who needs a portable, reliable instrument to move between classrooms. The built-in speakers and modest footprint mean you can set it up in a practice room, a dorm, or even a living room corner and still get a decent sound. On the flip side, if you're a professional pianist or a studio musician who relies on a massive library of orchestral sounds, the 17-sound limit might feel restrictive. Likewise, if you need high-fidelity output for a live performance, you'll probably want a dedicated PA system rather than relying on the internal speakers. The CX202 doesn't come with the extensive connectivity options you'd find on a stage-ready keyboard. No SMDI, no Bluetooth, so if you plan to integrate it directly into a DAW workflow, you'll need an extra interface. Those are